Happy New Year. This is CPAC Now, America Uncanceled. I'm Mercedes Schlapp, joined by Matt Schlapp and our CPAC board member, host of The Bill Walton Show. Bill Walton, thank you for joining us. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Okay, is it going to be a Happy New Year?
Let's hope it's better than the last year.
Like, what's happening? What's happening? What do you think? What is your, before we go into predictions of 2024, I think it's
He doesn't want to do predictions. What are you doing? You're putting us in a tough spot.
No, we're going to go back and talk about 2023. I want to talk about kind of the worst moments, the best moments politically, what we've learned, and how we can be prepared for 2023. So, Bill, I'm going to start with you. Give me your top, let's just start your top one there of what was kind of the worst moment of 2023.
Well, the worst moment of 2023 was October 6th.
Yeah.
When Hamas engaged in unbelievable, and what we're learning about that atrocity, it was even worse than was reported at the time. So that has to be the absolute number one.
Yeah.
And I'm searching for number two. I think the mugshot of Donald Trump is probably right up there. I mean, that's a symbol of a system going completely out of control. I mean, the deep state now is defending its prerogatives in a way that is just unprecedented and unsustainable, I think.
Yeah, and I was shocked because Joe Biden put out a tweet, which was, I think, almost comical, where he talks about how did he say it in his tweet? Something about love your enemies.
Yeah,
bless those who are cursed. It's a phrase that they use at church, for crying out loud.
He had some kind of inclination of something from the Bible, but he just didn't know it was from the Bible, which often happens when people are quoting from great works, just that the Bible's like more than a great work, and this is Christmas time, and he does have about 25 people doing his Twitter, so it just shows you that no one around him has any clue.
But the mere fact that he would say, bless those who cursed you, yet he himself is using the Department of Justice and is constantly pushing this weaponization of the DOJ, going after Donald Trump, using all of his minions to try to put his political opponent in jail. I mean, that is an outrage.
Well, yeah, yes.
Yeah.
It's my words fail. I feel like I'm doing imitation of Joe Biden right now. Let me see if I can do that. No, I don't want to do that.
Please don't do that.
It's too painful.
But I think it's just an indication of how insular these people are and how they only talk to each other. Mm-hmm. And the Colorado State Supreme Court, the courts up in Maine, all these people they only talk to each other. And most of the rest of this country, the so-called MAGA crew, the real people, I might say, they don't think we really exist, and they think they can operate with impunity. Mm-hmm. And Biden is the tip of that iceberg. Now, none of us really think that Biden is really in charge.
Oh gosh, no.
We can speculate about who that might be.
Who do you think it is, Matt?
Look, I think Obama looms large over the whole Biden presidency. I mean, he is the dominant figure on the left. But I also think there's a lot of Biden alum that have Obama alum who have populated the Biden administration. But at this point, you really have to look at his wife.
No.
This Dr. Jill Biden, by the way, I don't really think she's a doctor. I think she might teach at a community college. I like community colleges, but the idea, I think that's kind of a myth. Be careful about someone who tells you must call them doctor. You always need to check.
I think she has a doctorate in children's child education.
Oh, so she's a perfect expert on how they're destroying all of our kids. Maybe we should.
Yeah.
Anyway, the point of this is I think increasingly as he's physically enfeebled, she's playing a big role. She's with him a lot. She has to be advising him. She has to be telling them what he can do and what he can't do. And, presidents do talk to a series of advisors. Oftentimes it's including people in their family. There's no question that she has a dominant role in what could make a speech, what could not make a speech, what they might be talking about, what they might not be talking about. And we had this with the 2-for-1 presidency of Bill and Hillary Clinton, and the American people didn't like the idea that the spouse was kind of usurping so much power. Rosalind Carter was controversial for that as well, because he said she could go to any meeting she wanted. We're like, any meeting? I mean, you're the president, sir, not her.
Yeah.
And so I think this is a real question. It's one of the reasons why Joe Biden has such bad poll numbers because people think it's not clear.
Right. Well, and they see his feebleness. They see that he's unable to articulate a thought. But he did tweet out, the American people, so this is, I think, Joe Biden really starting to shift into campaign mode. He tweets out, the American people voted to protect fundamental freedoms like the right to choose. They voted to protect democracy. They voted against MAGA extremism. They voted for progress we've been making and will continue that progress into 2024. So he's already, I think, that's going to be the platform that he's going to run on. The MAGA extremists, the threat to democracy of Donald Trump. Will that be effective, Bill?
I don't think anybody will believe it even slightly, except the people I mentioned, the insular crew that want to believe their own rhetoric. I think regular Americans have seen this, seen these lies, and they're not buying it. And I think it's going to come down to the fact that we need to have a fair election in 2024. I mean, I think the votes are there. I think Trump could get 55, 60% of the vote potentially if we have a fair election.
You didn't ask me the same question about what I thought the.
And by the way, you're the political expert. I'm the one. I'm
I
the finance guy.
I don't know. I don't know if anybody can understand our politics anymore. But I do think it's interesting that I would have said the answer that was our low point. I mean, the attack on the kibbutz is really it's jarring, and it's it's a devaluing of just norms about even when you have an opponent, what is acceptable and not acceptable. But I do think, when I think about what's going on at the Department of Justice, the Robert F. Kennedy building, and you have Robert F. Kennedy's son talking about how out of step and out of line DOJ is. You have a lot of liberals talking about how out of line, talk about civil liberties being destroyed, constitutional rights being destroyed. Joe Biden walked up to the cameras and said, of course he's an insurrectionist. We all saw it. He's doing nothing but trying to get into the head of every person who could be on those juries.
Yeah.
His White House counsel team and the DOJ are all quarterbacking this whole attempt, which means that Joe Biden realizes the only way he wins. He can't win in a fair fight with Donald Trump. He wouldn't have won in a fair fight last time. I don't think he's going to debate him either. The only way he wins is if he can throw the flag and somehow get him off these ballots, whether through a conviction or even pre-conviction, which is what they're doing in states like Maine and attempting to do in Colorado.
And there's a nonprofit that's behind all of this that needs to be investigated to figure out where this money's coming from. That's the other piece.
But let me just finish real quick. I agree with that. But if the Department of Justice can be weaponized in this way, the civilization is doomed. America has always been at the forefront of having a written constitution that was all about the governed agreeing to be governed.
Yeah.
And this is the most crucial document, really, that's ever happened in a democracy, in a republic. And everything's out the window if they can get away with this kind of crap.
But I think the ship has sailed on that, Matt. I mean, with this administration, we've also got the unit inside Homeland Security called CISA, run by Jen Easterly, and we now have evidence through a court decision and all the testimony and all the emails that they got that the White House was instructing the social media companies to shut speech down. And initially, vaccines, masks, complying with all the lockdowns, but then it moved all the other issues. And Jen Easterly, who runs that group, the Homeland Security is supposed to protect our infrastructure. Well, she's defined infrastructure as the human mind. It's our cognitive infrastructure. And if she thinks people are inflicting wrong ideas into her infrastructure, she sees it's the federal government's responsibility to censor that. And so we're not going to change that unless we get back control of the Justice Department ourselves. We need to, it needs to, all those people needs to ripped out of their root and branch.
So let's try to shift into a more positive conversation.
Yeah, we promised ourselves a
it was
puppy
like,
episode.
but I think a lot of people are feeling this sense of this insecurity that America's not what it used to be. Where are the highlights? Where are those moments those moments in 2023 where you can say you know what, we're still fighting, we're going to fight hard.
Well, I'd say, quite honestly, I think it was great that there was a revolt in the House of Representatives. I think it's great that people are demanding action on these issues, mostly within Republican circles. I think it's spectacular when you and I go around the country and we talk to people, and you realize that there are more people that love this country than people that are trying to rip it apart. Bill's right that they have the levers of power in all the major institutions, and in some where we should really dominate, it's almost like it's a tie, which is really a shame. But despite all of that, the American people haven't fallen out of love with their country. They haven't fallen out of love with these ideals, and I think that gives us great hope. Now, I think it's kind of a do or die year.
It's a do or die.
2024, if you ever wanted to get involved, if you ever wanted to write a check, if you ever wanted to, say maybe I'll dabble in politics, I mean, you get your war paint on. It's time to get out in the field because this is a very, very critical year. And so I guess we could look at that being a critical year. I guess if you're a half empty kind of guy, you could say, oh, everything's going to go to hell in a handbasket. If you're a half full kind of guy, you could look at it and say, hey, we have a chance to turn the tide. I believe we're going to turn the tide.
Well,
Are we turning the tide?
I think some of the high points in the world, not only in the United States, but the work CPAC's done in other countries. I don't know, where did we have events this past year? We were in Hungary this year?
Yes.
Or
We were in Hungary. We were in Japan. We just did Hungary and Japan. Where else
just
did
did
we
Hungary
go?
and
You know,
Japan, those
there
were the
are a
big
lot of
ones.
good news stories
Yeah.
out there in these other countries that are waking up.
Oh,
to
Australia,
freedom.
sorry.
Oh, yes, CPAC Australia.
And I'm just envisioning all those Japanese wearing their MAGA hats,
Oh, yeah.
which
It
is
happened.
charming.
We joked around that we had the Japanese Dr. Malone who was there, and he was part of the panel. And really, I agree with you. I think that there is an uprise against the globalist agenda. And I really do think CPAC is spearheading those efforts. When we go across the globe and they're like, we know CPAC, we want, we're attached to CPAC, and they're building their own conservative parties. We saw this in Japan. They're fighting back against the globalist agenda, whether it's the gender ideology or the climate change. They know who our adversaries are. I think that's an incredibly compelling story. I do think that it is definitely a light in all of this darkness that we're seeing, because I do think that people want to fight for freedom, but not only that, they want America to succeed, because when America succeeds,
That's right.
succeeds the globe, those countries grow stronger.
One, I fully endorse what you're saying in terms of everybody needing to get involved with the election this year. I mean, Republicans tends to be something we do a couple weeks or do a little bit. We need to be all in this year.
Or they do it in October.
Yeah,
That's too
October.
late. Half the country's voted by
Yes,
then. Like,
it's done.
shit, we got to get
But
involved.
just back on the international front, what's happening in Argentina could be
That's
amazing.
brilliant, yes.
You've got a new president, Milei, and I love what he calls himself. It's based on an economic theory by Murray Rothbard. He calls himself an anarcho capitalist. And
Didn't I ask you what that was?
well, I've been working on it. It's actually pretty simple.
Okay.
He thinks that there's really nothing that can be done that can't be better organized by individuals self-organizing. Even building roads, bridges, tunnels, that sort of thing. You don't really need a government to do that. We could do that
Right.
if we contract freely with each other. And what happens if you take the state out of the picture, all of a sudden people start cooperating, they start trading, they start doing things, and that's the way the economy grows and how freedom grows. And
Yes.
so in I don't know, it's not a good label. Communications, we need to
work on
rebrand
that.
it.
We'll work on that.
But the point is, he just announced this week all these sweeping changes in
Yeah.
the Argentine economy. And
Laid off a ton of bureaucrats.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Well,
you know,
that's-
and really trying to simplify the government, doing a lot of deregulation as well. It's going to be interesting to see if it works, especially in a country
think-
like Argentina, where there's been so much economic instability.
And I think he's skeptical of the climate agenda, as
Yeah.
are
That's right.
the new leaders in Sweden, I believe. And,
That's right.
and I think also in Italy. I
Yes.
mean, we've got a number of people that are saying, wait a second, we can't completely reorganize our society based
Right.
on this ephemeral green energy. And so I think we're getting some pushback
And the
here.
DEI agenda doesn't really, that is a unique problem for America, because we were established as a country that would be inviting of people from other places. Whereas you go to these other countries, they don't really have the same kind of division along racial lines that we have. Yes, everyone has their racial questions, but this is a unique attack on America. I think on the green energy thing, it's going to be a bubble. eventually, the grid is going to break down. People are not going to be able to get these batteries, or they're going to be overly expensive. Like, that's the real thing. It hit Spain previously. It's hit these other countries. That's a ticking time bomb, right?
Well, I think the opportunity here for us is that there are a lot of ways to push back now. I mean, the wind and solar has given our whole strategic infrastructure to China. They're doing all of it. Electric vehicles, it's great, except you're not really sure how far you can drive on a charge. And if you try to replace a battery in your car, it costs more, and they're uninsurable.
Yeah.
I think people are going to start waking up to these false promises, and I think we get those things in our wheelhouse. It's not just the old Republicans thing, lower taxes, less regulation. No, these are kitchen table issues.
Yeah.
I think we can
They
get
sure
people
are.
energized with.
Okay, so final question here. Your prediction for 2024, what do you think is going to happen?
I think America's in for a rough ride. I think the left uses the same tactic, which is violent protests, to try to divide us and to get to their political aims. And I think that's going to be on steroids as it looks more and more like Donald Trump could come back. So
Right.
I worry about violence. I worry about Donald Trump's safety. I worry about Tucker Carlson's safety. I worry about all these people who are speaking. I worry about their safety. I think it's a good time to pray for our country, to pray that we stick together and we hold the course. And for the rest of us who would consider ourselves conservative or pro-American or in love with our founding and its principles, it's time for us to be courageous.
Well,
this is a time for
I worry
courage.
about the SLAP safety. I mean, you guys have been under withering attack this past
true.
year.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what the left does. What's the Saul Alinsky thing? You take a target, you personalize it, you single it out, and you make it all about how terrible these people are as individuals. You've been through that.
That's true.
It's just, and they're doing it repeatedly, time after time after. I think people are aware,
To
though.
us, to our friends, it's horrible.
Yeah,
so
but
I think
People are
we need a
waking up
shout
to-
out to the SLAPs.
Well,
I think that people, I will say this, we talk about this every day, which is the tactic has been laid bare. If you can't beat someone politically, just destroy them personally.
Yeah.
And they get on the same sheet of doing this. And so I'm really looking forward to all those names coming out with who visited Epstein Island. I think that would be just.
I'm just proud to be with you guys because you've taken the most personal beating of most of the people I know in the conservative movement, and you're not only surviving, but you're thriving.
We're going to get through this.
Yes.
Yep.
Prediction for 2024.
Prediction for 24, we will win the election. Trump will be our president, and I'll stick with that.
Oh, yes, I'm all in.
Ditto.
And CPAC, you always say it's the start of the...
It truly is.
It truly is the
CPAC's
start.
going to be right when the South Carolina primary occurs. We would have obviously had New Hampshire. We would have had Iowa. We would have had Nevada,
Yeah.
I believe. And, the Democrats have screwed up their schedule. But we're going to basically know that, I believe, Nikki Haley, if you can't win your home state, there's no way you can make the
Sure,
case
yeah.
that you're really a nationwide candidate for president. So my guess is she'll have to drop out before South Carolina. Either that or she gets humiliated. in
Nikki
South
Haley's
Carolina.
told us that the Civil War was about a disagreement and how to govern.
Really?
That's what
Was
she
that
just said
simple?
yesterday.
Wow.
Yeah, it had nothing to do with slavery.
Well,
Maybe all those people didn't have to
But
die.
I'm a financial guy. I'm supposed to hedge my bets. The only thing that's going to get us through this if we get Trump elected.
that's right. That's right. That's right. And we're going to be looking forward to having you all at CPAC. It's going to be, let me tell you, it's going to be a tough year, but I know that we can all rise together for this great country and really, really see amazing results. We're not going to give up. We're going to fight even harder. Have your sword and shield, and let's get going, because we're all going to be warriors in this incredible fight to save America and make sure we protect
But the
our
difference with
freedoms.
us is when we win
When we
and
win.
we take over the DOJ, we won't corruptly try to put them all in jail, but we're going to have to follow the law, including election law. And this time, if there are a lot of people on the left who are breaking that election law, I think there should be consequences.
Matt Schlapp, Bill Walton, thank you so much for joining us on CPAC Now America UnCanceled. As you know, we can keep talking. Us three when we're together. This is like our
how it
usually
goes.
our weekend conversations plus more. And we thank you so much for supporting CPAC, for being such a strong advocate for the work that we're doing, and get involved in your community and be part of our group, cpac.org. Get your tickets for this great event happening February 21st through the 24th. Thank you all, and Happy New Year.